So Luke 20 verse 45 through to 21 verse 4. While all the people were listening, Jesus said to his disciples, "Beware of the teachers of the law. They like to walk around in flowing robes and love to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces, and have the most important seats in the synagogue and the places of honour at banquets. They devour widows' houses and for a show make lengthy prayers. These men will be punished most severely." As Jesus looked up, he saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. "Truly I tell you," he said, "this poor widow has put in more than all the others. All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on." I don't know if you remember a few years ago, there was real controversy on the news about a company called Cambridge Analytica. And the news broke that they'd been selling vast amounts of data to social media companies and advertising companies. And I think most of us probably have no idea what was actually going on, what on earth that was about, and why it was so controversial, what were Cambridge Analytica actually doing, how they got this information. When I used to work on the ambulance, very often I'd be driving back home quite late at night, and on Radio 4 at night, that you get the real news stories, rather than the sort of headline, almost tabloidy news that tend to get you on the day. And they do really in-depth reports on some of the big stories. And they were talking about Cambridge Analytica and trying to explain to people like me with no idea what actually Cambridge Analytica were up to. And one of the people on there explained it in this way. Advertisers and social media companies, they want to know what is really going on in people's minds. But what is happening in your minds? If they know what's going on in your minds, they know how to pitch their adverts to you. And what do people aspire to? What do they want to achieve? What do they want to get? But how do they actually see their lives at the moment? And what do they think they need in order to bridge that gap between where they see their life and where they'd like it to be? And one example of the kind of data being sold by Cambridge Analytica was a great contradiction in posts between what people put on Instagram and what they search for online. And so they look at masses and masses and massive information, what different demographics in our society are posting online, and what those same people are searching for when they go into Google and they put in a search. And they said, young wives, here's an example of the kind of thing that they were putting together. Amongst young wives, the vast majority of posts that are put on Instagram are pictures of what they think is the perfect family. So they will post a picture of their Sunday lunch, this beautifully cooked, prepared meal that looks like it could have been done in a 5-star restaurant with a gorgeously laid out table with all table decorations on. Their children sitting there looking clean and washed and hairbrushed. Husband sitting there looking like some Hollywood film star, and the mum there in front of them, and they'll put that in there with a headline of me, my perfect husband and our 3 beautiful children. That is what they're posting on Instagram. That same demographic, when they do a search on Google, the biggest search is, why is my husband such an idiot? Or how can I control my feral kids? There's this massive contradiction between this is the image I want to portray, this is my perfect life, isn't it amazing? And the reality is, I don't know how to deal with my husband or my children, my life is falling apart. That's the image given by young wives on social media, and that's the kind of information they were putting together and saying this is what's going on in people's minds. They want to portray this particular image of glamour and perfect family. The reality is, no, everything's falling apart and they don't know how to cope. "2,000 years ago, Jesus didn't need Cambridge Analytica to tell him that that same contradiction was going on in the society that he was looking at. He looked at the religious elite, presenting an image of being in this perfect relationship with God. But underneath, their relationship with God was absolutely falling apart and was a mess. And these were the very people who'd been trying to catch Jesus out. They'd been trying to show how incredible they were by proving Jesus wrong. Look at us, aren't we amazing? We really know the law. We're going to prove how much we know by rubbishing this new upstart teacher who thinks he can tell us a thing or two. But then Jesus pointed at somebody else who was the complete opposite. Somebody who looked as though they had nothing, but who actually had everything with God. And it's all about extravagance. These two little passages that we read together are all about extravagance. Bad extravagance and good extravagance. Now the teachers of the law, they were undoubtedly extravagant. I wonder what comes into your mind when you think of the word extravagant. Well, these people were the picture of extravagance. They loved to walk around in long flowing robes. They loved to be greeted in the marketplaces. Flowing robes at that time were a sign of deliberate extravagance. Very few people could afford to buy articles of clothes quite like that. And even if most people could have afforded to buy them, they wouldn't have done. They wouldn't have wanted to. Imagine wearing a long, extravagant, flowing robe if you work in the fields. It's not very practical. It kind of get in the way and be far too hot. Well, imagine, Jesus growing up as a carpenter's son and working with Joseph. What's going to happen in that workshop if you've got long, flowing, extravagant robes? If you ever go into a workshop and you look at the drills and things, there's all these rules up, have nothing dangling from you, no clothes that are not that are loose or whatever. You just can't do it. It's not going to be long before some terrible accident happens if you're wearing clothes like that in a workshop. And you definitely wouldn't want to be wearing those clothes if you were looking after animals all day. These clothes were deliberately extravagant. They said, first of all, I am important. Secondly, they're saying, I'm rich. Look how much money I've got. I can afford to spend it on extravagant clothes like this that serve no purpose except show. They're not practical, but they don't half look good. And they pointed to the fact that this person didn't have to get his hands dirty. It proved that they were middle class. They didn't have to do a real job and get dirty. These clothes said, this is the kind of person you should give respect to in the marketplace. Teach your children to give respect to this sort of person. And the teachers of the law loved all that. They loved all the attention that these clothes got them. Now today, we still see that. We still see that idea of clothes and jewellery and outward adornment being a deliberate sign of wealth. And perhaps it expands, fast cars, beautiful homes. Why do people post these kind of images all over Instagram? They want people to look up to them and be impressed. Look at me. Look at what I've got. I can afford to spend thousands and thousands of pounds on big, blingy gold jewellery because I am rich. I've done okay for myself. I'm successful. I deserve it. 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, people were wearing these long flowing garments for the same reason. They were the Instagram generation of their day. But unlike today's Instagram generation, they also wanted you to think they were right with God. I don't think many on Instagram care whether you think they're right with God today, but these people back then, they wanted you to look at how well they've done and think, wow, they've done right with God. Wealth is God's blessing on me. God has blessed me with this wealth because I'm close to Him. I'm a teacher of the law and I'm close to God. They taught other people about God's law. They taught other people what the Old Testament really meant. And they liked to pray publicly. And boy, how they prayed. If you thought their clothes were long and flowing, their prayers were even longer and flowier. Biblical language, extravagant images, self-righteous themes. I thank thee, O Lord and mighty God, that thou hast seen fit to make me a God-fearing, righteous, bountiful human who does not fall into the pit of temptation like so other men. I thank thee, merciful, mighty, supreme one, for making me as handsome as a prince, as innocent as a dove, as wise as an owl, or as humble as a lamb. Or something along those lines. Or maybe that's just a window into my prayers, I don't know. They wanted respect. And they believed that they had earned respect by being altogether better than the people around them. They were right with God. But Jesus said, don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by their outward appearance. These men devour widows' houses. Thing to say. Jewish law said that you could not demand payment for teaching the law. What a great thing that is to have in the law. But they were allowed to accept gifts if people chose to give gifts. And some of these teachers would strongly encourage people to give extravagant gifts. A bit like some of your televangelists today. Send a gift and I will impart blessing. Some widows lost their homes because they gave so much to these teachers of the law. One writer said about these teachers of the law, they took great pains to ensure they looked right to the people in the marketplace, but failed to make sure they looked right before God. Their extravagance knew no bounds. It even extended to their financial giving in the temple. Around the temple were collection boxes. And these collection boxes had huge, great, I think they were brass, but metal openings that looked a bit like a trumpet. Imagine the top of this looking like a trumpet. So they had a great big opening at the top, but funneled down into a small thing, so the coins would roll in and go into the box. Now, when you put a coin in there, it landed with a resounding ding. If you threw it in from a little far away, you could make it make one heck of a noise. And the bigger the coin, the louder the noise. Oh, these men like to stand at a distance, throw in a massive coin, and everybody would look, dying. Yeah, that was me, putting in lots of money in the offering box. When Jesus accused the Pharisees and teachers of the law of blowing their own trumpets, this is what he was talking about. He was talking about them making the trumpet resound with the noise of the money going in so that people would see. They wanted to be noticed for everything they did. And then Jesus looks up and he draws our attention. He takes our gaze away from these men who everybody noticed to somebody who nobody else had noticed. Nobody had seen this woman. But here was somebody who was equally extravagant, but in a right way. She was a widow. She had barely any money. In the English, they've translated that as she was poor. That doesn't do justice to the Greek word that was used there. She was destitute. She had nothing. Unlike the teachers of the law blowing their own trumpets, she just very quietly walked past the collection box and dropped in the smallest Jewish coins that were available. 2 lepta. That was the smallest gift that you were legally allowed to give at the temple. Can you believe they actually put a minimum gift level that you could give at the temple? 2 lepta was the minimum you were allowed to put in. She didn't give the legal minimum because she was being tight. She gave the legal minimum because that was everything that she had. She had no more to give. This was extravagant giving. Not extravagant like the teachers of the law, extravagant for show. But this was extravagant in her love and in her devotion to God. She was giving all that she had. So these 2 people, the teachers of the law, and this would anything could happen on the screen at any moment. Oh, she's cleaning it actually, that's fine. Look. These people present us with a challenge. Say, where is our priority? Where's our focus? It's very easy to criticise those teachers of the law, but actually very easy to fall into the same trap that they were falling into. They wanted to look good to other people. They wanted people to know about their good behaviour, their extravagant giving, their wonderful prosaic prayers. They loved the adoration of others. And actually, deep down, don't we all love those things? I find myself so easily falling into telling people about the good things that we do here, about the sacrifices that Mandy and I have made, and just hoping they're going to say something really nice about the lovely things that we're doing. We go over the skate park on a Friday night. And you know, here's the contradiction, and so similar to these teachers of the law. I sit in the room at the back and I pray, God, will you be glorified tonight? God, glorify yourself through us. And then I go over there and I love people coming and telling us how nice we are for the things that we're doing. I'm still looking for admiration in the same way as these teachers of the law. And I wonder if I'm the only one, or whether anybody else recognises little bits of this in their own lives. Where is our extravagance focused? Is it focused on people seeing us and noticing us and thinking well of us? Or is it, are we extravagant in what we give to God? Are we extravagant in how we serve God? Our devotion to God? Might we even be a little bit like the Instagram wives who pretend to have this perfect life, but inwardly we're struggling. And we're desperately trying to present an image of something that may not be quite true. But a real example, if we really want to see extravagant sacrificial giving, is not even that woman, not even that widow, because somebody gave even more. When Jesus pointed out the contrast between the vain extravagance of the teachers and the sacrificial extravagance of the widow, he was pointing forward to the sacrifice that he was going to make for us. You know, with Jesus' knowledge of the scriptures that he had, with his deep authoritative teaching that he was able to give, he could have been a popular teacher with thousands and thousands of followers. Thousands of followers who themselves would have willingly given extravagant gifts to him. He could have been financially wealthy and hugely popular. He could have taken Israel by storm. Satan gave him the temptations to do that. Prove to everybody that you're the Messiah by throwing yourself from the high point of the temple. Take control of the whole world by worshipping me, Satan said. Jesus said, get away from me, Satan. Wealth, popularity and prominence were not what drove Jesus. Instead, he devoted himself to serving extravagantly and sacrificially God the Father. He devoted himself to giving everything that he had in his devotion to filling the gospel. He went to the cross and he very literally gave everything that he had. Everything, his very life, in order that we would have an opportunity to repent and believe and become children of God. God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That is extravagant love that God pours out on us. Real sacrifice that Jesus showed us. And so he becomes both our motivation and our example. This is love, the Bible says. Not that we love God, but that he loved us and gave his Son as an atoning sacrifice. Yet we love because he first loved us.